It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Hey folks, and welcome back to another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn. I'm excited to see you. Well, I'm not really seeing you today. I'm actually talking to you, and you're probably listening to this on your phone, out on a drive, maybe walking the dog, washing the dishes. I don't really know, but you're doing something and you're not looking at me physically because this is not a video. I'm here in the Furman Garner Performance Studio. Just excited as always to be partnering up with KUAF, the only public radio station here in Northwest Arkansas, 91.3 FM on your radio dial. And I'm excited because today, I tell people all the time, folks reach out to me and say, hey, we'd love to come on the podcast. We want to tell you the story about what we're doing, what we're working on. And we can't say yes to everybody because, well, we get a lot of people that reach out to us. And so we're kind of judicious about the choices that we make and the guests that we have on. And that's nothing. It's no slight against anyone that hasn't been on the podcast. It's just maybe your time will come. So keep reaching out, and certainly we will look forward to having you guys on the podcast at some point in time. But today, our guests are the folks from highwayventures.com. And one of the things that we've tried to promote on this podcast are new businesses, new organizations that start up here in Northwest Arkansas and the impact that they make in our community. And so I think that you will understand after listening to this episode why it was important for me to have the folks on highwayventures.com on the website to learn more about them, what they're doing, and how they hope to kind of bring their flavor of business to Northwest Arkansas and the work that they're doing. And I'm also just a little sad that one of the members of the three that are here today, Joe Camizio, Lou Patterson, and Dylan Terry, who I actually originally spoke with, could not be here today because he's got a little bit of a stomach bug. So Dylan, if you're listening, we missed you here today, buddy, but we're going to make the best of it with Joe and Lou and try to hold things down. So without further ado, I want to welcome Joe Camizio and Lou Patterson from Highway Ventures to the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. Yeah, we're excited to be here. Obviously, we're newer to the Northwest Arkansas region, but, excited to start our business here, excited to get talking with you. And yeah, I'll kick it over to Lane.
Yes.
It's unfortunate that Dylan's not here. Dylan is Irish, so that accent always
I know
makes him smart for sure.
So, yeah, no, we had a really great conversation a couple of weeks ago, actually, because we were introduced by the good folks at the Walton Family Foundation, and they had suggested that Dylan reach out and possibly see if they could get on the podcast to talk about the work that you're doing. So, for the uninitiated, I'd love for you just to kind of share a little bit about highwayventures.com, and then we'll figure out why you guys ended up here in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I guess we'll start off with we're a startup studio. What that means is that, we build companies by bringing in CEOs, bringing in technology, verifying problems in the market, and then hiring the teams and scaling the businesses. We focus on bringing really innovative government-funded technology from federal labs across the U.S., into the ecosystem. So, it's really tech, capital, and talent is kind of our three-pillar prong that we look to, approach things with that we think build strong companies.
So talk a little bit about that real quick, just so that our audience has a better understanding. When you say innovative government technologies from a federal perspective, is there kind of like a program out there that kind of highlights the things that the government's looking for, and then you try to meet some of those needs? Or are you kind of working with just really unique ideation that you say, can we bring this to market? And does it have a fit in the government space?
Sure. So it's kind of fascinating. Our tax dollars are going at the tune of about $200 billion into this federal lab ecosystem. There are, several hundred federal labs from the Sandias, the Lincoln Labs, the MITREs, which are federal funded research centers, to, the Cranes, the China Lakes, which are, more Department of Defense focused labs, and, as well as NASA. So tons of money are going in to create innovative research across all of these prospective labs. And then basically by law, they have to attempt to commercialize that technology or license that technology because they don't want the technology to die within the lab. And so a lot of it is publicly available, and a lot of it is relationship-based, based off folks that we know. But essentially, we approach these labs and say, hey, we'd like to license the rights to your technology that you've developed, whether it's a copyright, patent, or just an IP disclosure, license it, and then, take it into the private sector. So we're really focusing on turning what was once government-focused technology and licensing it and building it towards the private sector, potentially dual using it and selling it back to the government as well, if we think it can solve a problem there. But yeah, a lot of it is focused around finding cool technology that's the government and tax dollars have developed, licensing it and building companies around it.
Do you have an example of that you can speak to specifically, maybe not that you processed or did, that kind of stands out that we might be aware of, that is a company that has gone, from that lab perspective out to the general public?
The tires you drive on. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I was going to say the most famous example is the technology behind Siri.
Okay.
All that voice recognition technology came originally out of SRI, which is a federally funded research group, as a company called Nuance that went really to go on to be the source of most of the voice recognition technology out there. On a smaller sense, Joe and I were involved with a company called MAD20, which was a cybersecurity training course or training tool that we spun out of a MITRE Corporation.
Okay. And is that out? Is that actively?
It is.
It is. Okay.
Yep. That company has been spun out and is actively operating.
Okay. So sounds like, so what you do is you take what has been developed in a lab and then you try to build around that idea and grow it into something that could be a viable business.
Yeah. Sometimes it's really obvious. A piece of technology that provides cybersecurity for the military would do the same in a civilian situation or a private industry situation. Sometimes it's not so obvious. Sometimes there are technologies that were used to deploy something for the federal government that you got to kind of find that parallel use for. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's tons of stuff out there and a lot of really neat technology and commercially viable technology as far as that's concerned as well.
Yeah. So why Northwest Arkansas? This is a big country here. And you guys, where did you come from, Joe?
Washington, D.C.
Okay. And where did you come from?
Yeah, I came here, spent most of my life in Denver, but most recently Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay. All right. So two nice areas.
Yeah, two very nice areas. So, I think for us, there's a couple reasons. One is the business environment. We focus on advanced mobility, the moving of people and things from point A to B in a cheaper, safer, faster kind of way. So when you look at who the corporate players are here in Northwest Arkansas, they're the keys in that industry. There is obviously access to money here in this part of the world as well.
Yeah.
And perhaps the biggest intangible is an incredibly friendly professional environment, an environment where all tides rise, all ships go up with the tide. If you need to meet somebody, there's always somebody to help you. There are so many groups, whether it's formal groups like the Northwest Arkansas Council, or whether it's just the folks you see when you're having coffee every day that are willing to help. And honestly, it's really unique. I spent a lot of time in Silicon Valley, and people there are very closed and very protected of their ideas. In Northwest Arkansas, it's an amazingly collaborative environment.
It's like an open ecosystem of development, of business development.
It is. And everybody wants everybody else to succeed. It's not a dog environment. It's a, hey, let's all go, thrive together environment.
And it's the one thing, we've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast because people are very giving in this area, whether it's just through normal philanthropy or just through people just genuinely wanting to see other people succeed, right? Yep. A lot of places you go. I lived in the Bay Area for several years. I grew up on the East Coast. I came here from Boston. A lot of places where you got to put your time and effort in. And even then, they still look at you with a side eye, and it's not quite, I don't know if I trust you. DC is a great example of that. Yeah. There's an inner workings of DC, but then you could be right on the periphery or on the outside and you never are able to quite get things done because you don't know the right connectors to make things happen. And so I find it unique that Northwest Arkansas is so open and such a, what I like to call a blank canvas of opportunity.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And then for us, the other big reason for Northwest Arkansas is that As a startup studio, we are building new companies. So 2 to 3 new companies a year will be built in Northwest Arkansas, and we need to staff and build those companies out. So that means to us either access to amazing local talent, and whether it's the existing corporates, whether it's the spouses and significant others of those corporates, or whether it's moving people here, it's a great environment for that as well. So if you look at who our typical target kind of CEO is, it's a person typically who wants to ride their bike, wants to raise their kids in a place where they can walk to school, wants to be able to enjoy the outdoor activities and hiking and camping that is available here. So it's a lifestyle that very much fits the profile of the people that we're going to be to try to relocate to take these positions.
Yeah, okay, that all makes perfect sense. And so when you say, and I want to back up a second, when you say advanced mobility, can you describe that for us so that we have a better understanding of it?
Sure. So it's a pretty wide definition. It's, anything that moves people, goods, and technology throughout the country or the world.
Okay.
It can be anything from a cybersecurity widget that protects, a truck at the edge, anything supply chain related. I mean, as I'm sure you can tell from the corporates in the area, there are areas they focus on, and those are the problems that typically we're going to be focusing on. Mm-hmm. But, at a high level, we're not tightly defining it because we don't know what the technology that's going to come out is going to look like. I mean, if you think about it, the Department of Defense is the largest logistics operator in the world, moving goods around, moving assets around, and protecting those assets. So it kind of gives you an idea. I mean, the Department of Energy also focuses on, infrastructure and control systems throughout the country. So that's the type of technology that we're tapping into. And so how that fits into advanced mobility, I can't give you a perfect answer on that yet, but it really has to do with securing and ensuring that goods, people, and technologies can move around this country safely.
Well, yeah, and there's a little company just up the road a piece that does that, has been doing that for years. So, I mean, it's a solid foundation, right? When you think of logistics, supply chain, and just everything that goes into that, it's like a perfect storm in this terms of this location and what you have available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're delivering things with drones. There's all sorts of things going on.
Have you seen any of those drones? I've seen them out there. It's kind of cool.
I live in one of the locations that's served. So it's a good parlor trick to say hey, you want some crackers? Let me dial up the drone. The neighbor dog hates it, but other than that, it's pretty awesome.
It is cool. I've seen them take off from kind of some of the neighborhood markets and some of the other places where they come from. And so I think it's kind of cool just to see that. It's going to be normal. It's going to become normalized in the very near future where it's just going to be second nature. You're just going to see these drones. I just don't see them a lot in the air. I just happen to be at a couple of places where we've seen it happen. So it's kind of cool.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an interesting area. And I think, as it unfolds, we're definitely going to pay close attention to it. The regulatory piece around it is pretty fascinating too. Being from DC, I always like to pull that into it. But yeah, I mean, the whole advanced mobility, supply chain logistics space is going through kind of a revolution right now, as everything gets connected. And what does that mean? And that's where we're trying to play.
Okay. All right. So, now you guys are here. So we're certainly excited about that. How are you hoping to connect with this community? What have you done so far to reach out? Obviously, you're doing this podcast. You participated in an event last week that was MidCon. Is that right? Yep. So you're kind of out there getting the word out. What are the normal reactions that you hear when people hear a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I think we've been pretty active in the local community, hyper focused on networking and making all those connections. As we mentioned, it's a great community. So it's really easy to meet people, and not just meet people, but meet the people that you want to meet.
Yeah.
It has been an interesting month in that there have been, 2 events a week for the last month. It's been kind of into the deep end for us as far as that goes. But we've been super active in the local community, and maybe as importantly, been really active with the labs around the United States and some of our funders around the United States, because us being here is half because of what we all talked about, but it's also the other half is for us to kind of be those ambassadors and get the federal labs to feel comfortable with it. We've had international visitors in over the last couple of weeks to show them the local area. So it's kind of a two-way street. Now that we've drank the Kool-Aid and we're kind of on the inside here, now we're really trying to make those other groups feel comfortable with really the imminent success, if not already successful Northwest Arkansas ecosystem.
So Of course, you guys just got here a couple of months ago as we're recording this. And I mean, what are your plans for like the next, year, 2 years? What are you hoping to accomplish within that time frame? Or maybe are you hoping to see a couple of businesses spin up out of Highway Ventures?
Yeah, absolutely. We will launch a business definitely in this calendar year.
Okay.
And then within the first 18 months, the goal is to launch a total of 3 businesses.
Okay. All right. So up to 3 businesses in the first 18 months that you're here on the ground.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So what do you think that will mean for the people of Northwest Arkansas here in terms of, will most of the jobs that you create through this business be domiciled here in Northwest Arkansas for the most part?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what it means for the people of Northwest Arkansas, there'll be high-paying jobs. We're going to look to bring capital into the ecosystem, so investment from outside into the region and, continued entrepreneur opportunities for people interested within the ecosystem. I mean, I think it's really company, job, and capital building within the ecosystem.
Okay. All right. Company, job, and capital building. Okay. Well, I'm excited about this to see what you guys are able to, to come up with and how that all comes together. Lane, before you guys started this, what were you doing?
So actually, Joe and I were working together. We were running the corporate venture capital division project at MITRE Corporation.
Okay.
So we had more or less kind of been doing the same thing, just for a big company.
Okay. How did you connect with Dylan?
So prior to that, I worked for Enterprise Ireland, which is the venture capital arm of the Irish government.
Okay.
So Dylan and I were a team. We ran the telco and IoT practice for Enterprise Ireland.
Yep.
Actually out of the San Francisco office for a couple of years.
Wow. IoT. That's very cool. And that's how you guys basically got together and said, why don't we do this?
Yeah. Dylan and I were a team there. I ended up joining Joe over at MITRE. We weren't at MITRE very long until we needed some help building some business models. Dylan was on the free market. So we hired Dylan as a consultant and created kind of the basis of this whole plan, which I finally call the Camizio Terry model, named after Joe Camizio and Dylan Terry. But kind of put together a plan for how we launch and fund and validate these businesses.
Yeah. So have you guys already had conversations with local individuals with regard to some of these potential projects?
So we've, the kind of different groups we bucketed into. It's like obviously the corporates, we're starting to talk with corporates and, potential problem validators. I mean, there's the individuals, which are prospective entrepreneurs or prospective employees. I mean, we're constantly having folks reach out to us on LinkedIn from, the press we've put out or events we've spoken at or people we've run across or people we've been introduced to. Mm-hmm. We're at the point where we're saying, hey, we want to continue building that web of people that we know and people that we want to work with. And so, yeah, we've been meeting up at, Blake Street probably, once every other day, if not once a day, with different folks we're coming across that we think can either be subject matter experts, validating technology, can be early company founders, early company employees. We just want to meet great people, great, smart people that, have a shared vision with us to make this successful. Yeah.
And you're speaking of Blake Street House.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Shout out to them. Great facility right up there in Bentonville. They have get-togethers. Actually, they have get-togethers once a month for people that are just recently relocated to Northwest Arkansas. So they do a really good job of kind of helping to incorporate and bring people in the community together. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty exciting. So, well, okay, this all makes sense. I would be curious to know if you guys are seeing anything specific in this area that you weren't aware that you would experience once you got here before you left to come here. So, like, is there something about this area now that you've seen outside of what we just talked about? We know that people are friendly. We know that, anyone will have a cup of coffee with you. That's great. But is there anything else about Northwest Arkansas that really just kind of stood out where you're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea this area was like this?
I'm trying to think of like anything that shocked me. Well, it's a tough question because we came here 5 or 6 times prior to moving here. We were here for multiple trips.
So you felt like you did your due diligence.
We did our due diligence. I mean, I think, not to keep coming back to it, but the access has still surprised me to this day. I have a meeting with someone and they say there's 3 or 4 people you should talk to. Not only do they follow up with me, but they send emails with the introductions to the people. In DC, you might get an empty offer to a Rolodex.
Yeah.
And they'll never follow up. And you can email them 3 or 4 times or call them 3 or 4 times after. And it kind of just dies. And there's a lot of like, I'll talk to your face, and then behind the back, behind your back. In DC, it's not like that. In Arkansas, there's just an honesty and an integrity in the way about doing business. And, I think the thing that surprised me the most is that, people really wear, their emotions and everything on their sleeve. I mean, they show who they are. I think if you cross them, then, you're going to have some issues there, but it's a very open, honest place that I think that kind of, it still surprises me, even though I knew it coming in based off of the trips and stuff I've taken here.
Yeah. I mean, it is, I always have to remind myself of that. And I'm always telling my friends, anybody that will listen, my friends on the West Coast, my friends on the East Coast and some of the bigger cities, I'm like, man, just, don't knock it till you've tried it. Come out here, see what it's all about. I'm trying to convince family members to move here, much less people that want to start a business. But I can't think of a better place to start a business than Northwest Arkansas, because you have the outdoor activities, you have the culture is continuing to grow. I mean, little things that we need to work on, like restaurants being open past 9 o'clock. Those are little things. Those will get solved over time, right? Mm-hmm. But I mean, but when you think of the bigger picture of what you're able to do, the farmers markets that exist in all of the major squares of every downtown between Bentonville, Rogers, Springdale, and Fayetteville. I mean, it makes for a great opportunity for people to really, get to know this area and really kind of embrace it for themselves.
Yeah. I mean, I also, one other thing I'll add is I'm surprised at how much it outkicks its weight. Even at the MidCon VC last week, I mean, there were people in from all, major coasts, major VC firms there. It's impressive. It's the population isn't large compared to most cities. So like
576,000 people.
Right. And it just outkicks its weight, which is the more I learn, the more I meet people, the more that I attend events. It still impresses me considering the size of it, of Northwest Arkansas versus, what it really pulls in and what it really has from a, impact perspective.
Yeah. Were you going to say something, Lane?
Oh, I was just going to say it to me, the interesting thing, maybe the surprise, there's a financial commitment to startups. We talked about all the connections. There's very much community commitment of the startups, but it is interesting that most of the infrastructure is not surprisingly, I guess, in hindsight, not built for the startups. So when you look at office space and you look at, a lot of the structure of how people do business in Northwest Arkansas, it's not as well designed for the startups as it is for the big guys and the vendors to the big guys.
Yeah.
So I think there is some work that has to happen there as well.
I mean, that's a valid point. I think it's just a matter of time. I mean, you're starting to see more and more workspaces. We've got live workspaces. So especially during the pandemic, we had a number of those that came about, just saw a real need, especially when we were having a lot of people that were working remotely here, but they were working for companies elsewhere. Now we've got the issue of how do we create like these workbenches right here locally for companies to work from, so they're not having to work out of the garage or anything like that.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
So, and I think it's coming. And the other thing is we have a lot of space. It's just if that space is properly used and developed for that.
I think that's what it is. And there is a lot of space. And you see either really large spaces, which as a startup trying to, when we start a startup, we're going to have budget restraints on what they can use on, certain things. So they're not going to go out and rent, a floor on a building. And I think there's a really unique pressure in Northwest Arkansas in that you've got all of these vendors to the big companies. When Joe and I are competing with Coca-Cola for a space over at the Ledger, it's not a fair fight. So it's very interesting. It's just a very unique aspect of this community that you don't see in other places.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. And that's, that's just kind of par for the course, right? With the way this area is. I mean, I have a friend that is a vendor to Walmart and they're based out of the Bay Area, but they have somebody here locally, very small shop, but everybody has a presence here in Northwest Arkansas. And I think that more than anything else is a good thing because it ensures that this area is going to continue to grow and that there's going to be new opportunities. And I don't know if you've seen the new Walmart facilities that are being built up there in Bentonville, but it's It's pretty impressive to see what they're going to do.
We drove right by it on the way here today.
Yeah. I mean, it's insane. I mean, they're going to have, I just heard the number the other day, is 60,000 square feet of space for outside vendors. Not just Walmart folks, but just outside vendors. Because I know there's going to be a Wright's Barbecue up there. There's going to be, I'm sure there'll be a Chick-fil-A in that facility. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of everything. But there are a lot of vendors that are not the internal workings of the Walmart ecosystem, but external, or that are going to be part of there. And you'll be able to ride your bike right up on the Greenway will go right through the campus. So, which is cool, because if you go to Cupertino, you don't get that same vibe when you go to see Apple. Matter of fact, you can barely get on the campus without somebody stopping you. So it's not the same.
Yeah.
It's definitely not the same. So listen, as we close out, I really would love for you just to, as for somebody listening that you might be a good type of person to have a cup of coffee with, what would you want to say to them in terms of maybe somebody that's kind of said, wow, these guys are here now, and I have some ideas or some things I'm trying to get off the ground. And now that Highway Ventures is here, this is a real possibility. I've heard about, the federal ecosystem when it comes to the labs and what might be available to bring to the general public. But now that Dylan, Joe, and Lane are here, what would you want to say to them?
Sure. So there's a lot of smart people in this ecosystem who have a lot of expertise in different areas. And so, it's kind of twofold. It's, do you have an area of expertise, or, are you subject matter expert? We would love to work with you, around a ton of different areas within the supply chain and logistics space, where if you have a bit of an entrepreneurial curiosity, we're the type of people that you'd want to work with. We're very innovative thinkers, kind of outside of that traditional corporate structure of things of a big company. So I think anybody, looking to find that entrepreneurial spirit without an idea, potentially, we're the type of people you'd want to work with.
Yeah. And as I'm sitting here thinking about this, I have spent the last couple of years speaking to the first and second year students at the Walton College of Business and the MBA program. And that's some fertile ground as well for you. And so I hope some of those students are listening. We will be sure to tag them when this episode comes out, because I think that there would be quite a few people that would be more than appropriate for what you're talking about. As a matter of fact, I can think of several people just off the top of my head that would be people that you should probably talk to. So I'll have to figure out and work out an email myself to send to you and make some introductions.
What a perfect example of Northwest Arkansas right there. Come on a podcast and meet great people that are introducing us.
Exactly. So, well, listen, I certainly do appreciate it. So since you've only been here a short period of time, I got to ask you this. What do you enjoy doing on your off time when you're not busy trying to solve the world's problems through advanced mobility?
Well, I'm gonna go with the cliche Northwest Arkansas answer. I love to ride my bike.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. Are you a mountain biker or a road bike guy?
I am a mountain biker or a gravel biker.
Oh, okay. You're a gravel rider.
I don't trust folks on the road.
Okay. There's a Grand Fondo coming up soon, I think, that's happening in Bentonville. Actually, I got a mess. It's
I can't even keep track.
So,
there are events every single weekend.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Coming from Colorado, how do you say we stack up when it comes to the outdoor experience? I know it's different. I got to be
careful with all my Colorado friends here.
I know.
So I'm a Denver guy. I grew up in Denver, grew up in South Denver. The Denver that I left was not the Denver that I grew up in.
It's changed a lot.
It's crowded. It's difficult to park at a trailhead. There's not the clear runs of a bike that there used to be.
Mm-hmm.
So in a lot of ways, it's kind of like road systems. Like they built this trail system purpose built. It disperses people. You can ride the kind of things you want to ride. You can take beginners out and feel perfectly comfortable. But if you really want to test yourself, or if you want to, do some Red Bull style jumps, it's all there.
Yeah.
So I think as far as that goes, it's amazing. If you're a purist and what you really want is natural, old school goat trails, then it's hard to beat Colorado.
Yeah, I got you. That's cool. What about you, Joe?
So I'm a big live music fan. I've been really impressed. I do. He's dragged me out on the mountain biking thing. I will say that. I got a nice,
I see that.
A nice elbow guy right now from my first fall on the mountain biking, coming down the castle a week or so ago, which was a blast. But I'm loving the live music here. I've been to the Amp a couple times. I've been to George's,
Victory
Theater over in Rogers. We went to Meteor up in Bentonville. So saw a blues night there. So I've been trying to catch a concert once a week, and I just saw Whiskey Myers on Saturday night, which is a great time.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm loving the live music here. It's right up my my alley as far as the genres that seem to be rolling through. So I'm enjoying that a lot. Yeah,
because DC has a great live music scene. I mean, I went to school in DC, and so, I mean, you had Blues Alley in Georgetown. I mean, but you had just a bunch of venues and that you could go to. But yeah, it is surprisingly, like you said it earlier, that the expression is we punch above our weight in terms of not just in business, but also in cultural aspects of Northwest Arkansas. Have you been to Crystal Bridges yet?
I have been to Crystal Bridges.
What did you think of that?
I was very impressed by it. My mom was in town right as I moved here. She was so curious. why are you moving to Northwest Arkansas? And she came in and she's like, I get it.
Okay, I get it. I understand.
I took her for a walk through Crystal Bridges, checked out all the art. We got a picture of all the neon signs at the end of it. Because we've got a couple in the basement back home. So my dad was loving that. And then, we walked around, saw all the art along the trails and everything. Just wildly impressive.
Yeah. Did you see the Frank Lloyd Wright House?
I think I saw it's like up there in the woods, right? Yeah. I've seen that before.
They disassembled that in New Jersey and shipped it here.
Okay.
And then rebuilt it, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's very good. So have you had an experience like that with your mom, Lane?
Unfortunately, my mom's no longer with us.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Or a family member that
I have had that experience.
Okay. And, that's cool.
Yeah. So maybe to wrap up, I'll ask you a question.
Yes.
Joe and I, being relatively new here, I have some friends from Denver that I had dinner with last night and had coffee with this morning. And the thing we try to really do is explain Northwest Arkansas to people. How do you explain it to people?
So one of the phrases, and I should probably trademark this, is that Northwest Arkansas is an embarrassment of riches. And I mean that beyond just any type of financial aspect of it. I mean, again, I find the people to be genuinely interested and interesting, right? Yes, there is the cliche of you can walk into any Walmart and somebody's going to talk to you in line while you're waiting to check out, right? Even though now we go through these automated queues. But the bottom line is that people here really want to know when they ask you how you're doing, they legitimately mean it. In Boston, nobody's asking you how you're doing. In DC, people just don't have time to do that. It's
they don't even make eye contact.
And in New York, it's like I'm walking here. I got things to do. So it's like all I need is you and your problems. So it's just different. I think that everything that you've said is what I have experienced in this area for the last 10 years, and it's the reason why I continue to press record on this podcast, because a lot of times people just don't believe it. And I have to bring on individuals like yourselves and others, some that are newer to the area, some that have been here for a while, to just say, hey, this is a special place. I can't always put my finger on it, but it is special. And yes, you have the trails, you have just the natural beauty. I was driving back from Little Rock yesterday after a soccer tournament. And after you come through that Bobby Hopper tunnel and you just look out to your right and you just see the cascading hills, and it's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain, and you just have to kind of see it for yourself. But like you said, with you and your mom at Crystal Bridges and just the experiences that you're having throughout the area, it's special. And it sounds corny. I know it sounds like hyperbole. It really isn't. And I think anybody listening to this that's on the fence about coming to Northwest Arkansas, don't knock it until you've tried it. You have to come see it for yourself and understand why Joe and Dylan and Lane have decided to make this place their home and have moved their families here. People are doing this every day. We have, 36 net new people a day moving to Northwest Arkansas. We are the fastest growing MSA in the country, one of the fastest growing MSAs in the country. So there's a reason behind that. And I'd like to think that a lot of what Highway Ventures is bringing to the ecosystem, as well as what already has been established, is the reason for that. So I thank you guys for coming here, for uprooting your families and moving here to Northwest Arkansas. And certainly, mi casa, su casa. So that's why I wanted to bring you on the platform and share your story with our audience, because I think it will make a difference. And all we need is just one person to hear this. That's like, I gotta call Joe and Lane. I got to call Dylan, and I've got an idea that I've been sitting on, but these guys sound like just the people to help me bring this to fruition. So that's it.
No, so sounds great. I love the answer.
Yeah. So that's it. And I'll stick with that at all times. But anybody listening to this podcast, if you ever have a question about Northwest Arkansas, reach out to your boy. I'm happy to talk with you about it. And if you need me to convince your mama to move here, I can do that too. So I've actually done that. So I'd like to think I'm pretty good at that. So, but listen, Joe, Camizio, Lane, Patterson, and the absent member, Dylan Terry, thank you guys so much for coming on the podcast today.
Oh, really appreciate it. Thanks a lot for having us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much. Put a smile on my face.
Absolutely. My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, folks, that's another episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. To learn more about us or to read or download the show notes from today's episode, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. You can listen to this podcast and sign up for our free newsletter to keep up with us and all things NWA. Sign up today. You can follow the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast wherever you listen to it. It doesn't matter, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're on YouTube. Everywhere you go, you can check us out. And then please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Remember, our podcast comes out every Monday, rain or shine. I'm your host, Randy Wilburn, and we'll see you back here next week for another new episode of the I Am Northwest Arkansas podcast. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.